Hey everyone, this is Prince from Desi Programmer, and in this video we are going to talk about CRUD operations in Laravel. So we are going to talk about what models are. We are going to see how you can use a model to create a blueprint for a table, and then how you can use the same model to manipulate data. So we can insert a data, delete a data, retrieve a data, and do so many things. This one is all about a simple CRUD API. So obviously, as the term itself suggests, it's an ideas API. So you will get all the ideas. You can add an idea, you can delete an idea, and you can update an idea. So that's what we have here. We are going to use get, post, put, and delete for doing that. So that's what we are going to do in this one single video itself. So let's dive right deep into it, and let's get started with Laravel models, and we'll talk about ORM and simple CRUD operation. All right, so let's get started by creating a simple Laravel project, and I will call this as ideas API. So we have composer state space create dash project Laravel and then the project name. Alright, so now that this project is up and running, I will do a quick ls, and you can see that we have this Laravel API basics, our old project, and the ideas API, the one that we created just right now. I will use my code editor VS Code right now to open the ideas API project, and the next thing that I want to do is to switch this particular project. So we have ideas API. Now I can do a quick PHP artisan serve, and the server will start itself. So we are going to use Postman for testing, obviously, and here as you can see in our routes we have api.php, which is going to be our API routes. As of now we simply have this something gibberish that we don't really want. So I'm just going to remove this everything, and I'm simply going to put a simple get request at the home route, and all that this request does is that it returns a very simple message that says welcome. Alright, let's save this, let's go back to Postman, and okay, let's close this. Now if you go to /API, click on send. So alright, we have some error. Let's save this. We need a semicolon here. Send again, and okay, welcome. So this basically means that our server is up and running. Our project has been set up successfully, and now we can start coding our APIs. So just as I've already said, this video is all about understanding the basics of model and how to work with that. So first thing first, we have to create a model, and we are going to create a controller that will help us with managing the particular model or handling all our API routes. I've already talked about why we would use a controller or something like that, because I don't want to fill here with all the code, and that's really a neat way. So first let's close this, and we are going to get started with simple things. First thing first, we are going to create a controller. So to create a controller, we are obviously going to use PHP. Alright, so to create a controller, we are going to do something like PHP artisan make controller, and our controller name is going to be ideas controller. You can just leave this as ideas too, but you see then you will have a controller named ideas, you will have a model named ideas, and if you can get confused, so most people can get confused, so I'm having ideas controller and ideas model. You can add a /API here, and I've already said that it will create automatically some basic routes, and since we are going to do that, I can use it, and that's what we are going to do. Although as kind of a test, you can try making this without this /API. So hit enter, and this will create a controller. Now you can see in our app HTTP controllers, we have an idea controller, and we have a couple of these functions. Index, as you can see, it will display a listing of the resource. It will create a new resource. It will display a specific resource. It will update a resource, and this will delete a resource. So all these functions are pretty self-explanatory, and that's what we are going to do here, obviously. Now we need a model to work with this, and as you can see in our models directory, we already have a user.php. So there are some models that Laravel provides us by default. One of them is a user. So if you are trying to log in or log out a user, so this user model will handle that by default. We need something as that, and that's going to be our ideas model. And since that's not provided by default, we are going to have to create it. So we are going to do something like PHP artisan make model. I will name my model as ideas model. So ideas model, and then I'm going to use this /migration so that it generates a migration file where we can add our tables blueprint. Hit enter, and now you will see model created successfully. It has created a migration, and I can just now go to this particular database migrations, and here we can see we have a create user tables, and we should have a password reset, and there we have a create ideas model table. As you can see, this is going to create a table. The table's name will be ideas model. I don't want that, so I will just replace that at both these places. Okay, so now our table name is going to be ideas. Our table is by default going to have two fields. One is an ID for every row, and then timestamp for every row which will be created at and updated at. And that's one good thing. You don't know, like now Laravel is going to do that by default. You don't have to do anything. Every time you update it, it's going to add the updated at. If you create something, it's going to add the created at. Now obviously we need some more fields here. So we are going to have $table dash. First of all, we are going to have a character field. So that's going to be title, and I'm going to limit it to just 100 characters. Next we are going to have a dollar. We are going to have a description field which is going to be medium text. This will be description, and then we are going to have a completed or not, which is going to be boolean. So we're going to have $table, and this is going to be boolean, and this is okay, I think boolean, and it will be completed. This will have a default value, so when somebody is creating something, it's going to be by default not completed. So since it's SQL, it doesn't have true and false, it has zeros and ones. So as you can see, the simple point here is that you say you have $table. You first give the type that you want for a particular column to be, and then you give the column a name. So type and name, and then here are some extended methods. So you can have default, you can have nullable, something else that obviously has its meaning. So default value, it could be null or something like that. Now if you want to know more about this, that's actually fairly simple. In my website's blog that I was talking about, you can see we have all these available column types. If you can just go there, you see you get all these types. You can simply get what you want from here, and you will understand what this means. Alright, so now that's being done, what you need next is MySQL and creating the connection. So next part is how you create the connection. For that, first thing you need is XAMPP, and that's why I asked you to install XAMPP control panel so that you can get MySQL and PHP admin by default. So I will start both Apache server and MySQL server. Apache server because I'm going to visit localhost/phpMyAdmin. Then here, as you can see, we have this setup and running. There are other databases too. We have to run a migration. We have to make sure that all these tables are created. Before that, we have to go to .env file, and here you can see we have this DB connection. So I'm going to connect to MySQL. It's going to be localhost, port, everything is correct. The only difference is that you have to put there your database name, right? Now if you're deploying it, you'll have a database name that will be created by cpanel. Right now I'm having a simple test as database name. You will have a username and passwords, whatever that is, you have to replace it here. And that's why whenever you will see my repository, the .env file won't be added there, because this is now private data. You don't want to share it with the world. Alright, this is according to your server, so I will leave this. And that's why you have a .env.example, so that if somebody is using my repository, they can see what things I had in there, and they can just copy paste it and then add their own credentials. In simple terms, you will first just start up your MySQL server, start up your XAMPP MySQL server, to go to .env file, and here just leave everything as it is. Just add your database name, your username and your password name. By default it's going to be same, so just create a database if you want. I'm just going to go with a test database that I've already created, and it actually exists by default, so I'm just good there. As you can see, both this is up and running. So if I open my browser and if I go to localhost/phpMyAdmin, this is what I have. Test is completely empty right now. Let's go back to our terminal, and now we have to run migration. For that, it's actually simple. As you can see here, I have said to migrate, you have to simply call php artisan migrate, and I will do everything. So I'm going to do something like php artisan migrate. By the way, sometimes if you're making changes, so for example, let's say I was working with this and I realized that, hey, actually I want a new field here. Okay, now I have added a new field and I want to make migration, but since this has already been migrated, if you run the migration command again here, php artisan migrate, it's not going to have any effect. Now you can do something like :refresh, and what this refresh does is that it will delete all the previous migration tables and their data, and it will remigrate everything, something that we do a lot during development. Right now, since it's first time, I'm simply going to do php artisan migrate. It says migration table created successfully, and these are the tables that have been created. Let's go back to your localhost phpMyAdmin, refresh this, and there you have all these tokens. Okay, we have failed jobs, ideas, something that we have created. So id created, add updated, add title, description completed, something like that. And then there are users, personal access token, password resets, things like that. We are going to talk about them when we talk about authentication, obviously. Right now, let's talk about this ideas model that we have just created. So now that we have this ideas model up and running, now that our our database is connected, obviously it's connected, that's why the migration was successful, and we have all this data right here. The next thing that we have to do is to make our simple route. Now there is something called as resource, so you can do something like route double colon resource, and what that does is that it automatically routes according to this particular API route. So you know how we use double dash API while creating the controller. So now you can use a route dot double colon resource, and that will automatically route to this. You have to just call this and that will be done. I don't want to do that. I want to actually handle that manually my own. That's fairly simple. I just want to go to my ideas.api.php. so here I'm going to have route double colon get. So we are going to keep it simple, not adding any prefix or something like that. If you go to ideas, you are going to get all the ideas. So it's going to come from ideas controller. Let's import it. So use app / http / controllers, and if you have any problem with that, you can just go to the controller, right click, copy relative path, paste it here, remove this, and there you are done. Okay, just make sure that you make this capital A. So now app http controllers ideas controller, copy this, paste it here, double colon class, remember how we talked about, and it's going to be index method. So if you go to /ideas, if you make a get request to /ideas, it's going to list out all the ideas that you have. All right, in the same way we are going to have post, put, and delete with obviously different function calls here. So we are going to have post, we are going to have put, and we are going to have delete. Right now let's talk about post and get only. I will come to that later. So we have post, and post is going to call store, because remember here we have this something called store, which will store a resource. It's not like store has to store the resource, it's just a naming convention. Even so can store a resource, because the code is something that we have to write, that's not automatically generated. Anyway, now that this is done, we have a /ideas and the post of /ideas. We are calling index and store. Now is the time to actually store some data and get all the data. And that's where you will be amazed by how Laravel makes things very simple for you, right? So since we're using model, first thing first, we have to actually import a model here. You have to use a model here. I'm using import multiple times because whether it's Python, JavaScript, Dart, or whatever it is, we say the word import. So anyway, let's have our model. We are going to do use app / models / and then your model name. So it is ideas model. Okay, make sure that your spelling and everything is correct. Okay, or otherwise, just as I just said, just do a copy relative path, use, paste, and just make this capital A, remove this .php, and yep, you are good to go. So that's done. Now see, that's where things get really interesting. All that I have to do, if I want to return everything that is in my model, right, all that I have to do is something like return ideas model, okay, double colon all. And what it will do is that it will return all the data that we have. Let's save this. Let's go to Postman and let's make a get request to /ideas. Hit enter, and okay, we are having an error because I have not started my server. So php artisan serve, and let's click on send. You see, we are going to, okay, we have base table or view not found, table test .ideas model does not exist. Alright, so we have made an error. Actually, I should not be renaming this here. We can rename this, but it's going to have any issue. So what we're going to do is that it's actually simple. We are simply going to copy this. We're going to replace this at both these places. Save this. Let's go back here. We're going to do something like php artisan and migrate double colon refresh. And what that does is that it will refresh the entire migration. Okay, and now we can run our server. We can go to Postman, click on send, and this will give us an empty array because obviously we don't have any data in the database, right? So first thing that we have to do is to add some data. We can do that manually too, just to show you, but I'm not going to do that. Let's first talk about adding a data, then this will automatically give you result. Adding a data itself is again very simple. Okay, all that we have to do is to send the data and then we have to add it. I mean, like, obviously this is something that we do, but let's see what I am talking about here. I'm saying all that we have to do to add a data is that we have to do something like ideas model double colon create. Now here you can individually map them. So for example, you can do something like let's say the title, and you can give it a title. So let's say it's going to be test title. Okay, and let's actually save this. I'm going to show you why this thing actually makes things simple. I'm saying, create a row, like create a data point where the title is going to be test title. Save this. Let's go to Postman. Let's make a post request. Let's click on send, and it will give us this error. It says add title to fillable property to allow mass assignment. Okay, so this one is on me. This is actually an error. Let's go back to ideas model. As you can see here in this model, there is nothing here. So basically we have to add some data here, and this you have to do for every model. And this is a common error that all of us make, especially me, because I'm not coding in Laravel for most of the time. So every time I create a model, I forget that I have to do this too. So basically, as you can see here, we have many fields, right? But this is going to have a predictive layer which says there are only some fields that you can assign value to. So I am saying that I can assign value to title, I can assign value to description, I can assign value to completed. So I have to add that right in here. And that's actually very simple. I have to do something like protected dollar fillable, that's fillable, fillable, okay, is equal to that an array of the values that you can add. So I can add title, I can add description, and I can add completed. Add means I can manipulate these particular values. We're also going to talk about casts right here. But right now, after we have added this, let's go back again. Let's click on send, and we still have an error. It says, hey, field description doesn't have a default value. This is really interesting. So what happens here is that we can write low-level raw SQL queries, obviously. But this very simple one line of code, what this does is that it checks everything from us, and this actually saves you from many database level errors. So when you are actually adding the data here, right, it will check that for you. And even when you're updating it and doing things like that, you'll realize how model or this ORM make things so simple for us. So like obviously we are saying that this medium text description can't be null, and since this can't be null, we have to add a value. So let's go to our ideas controller and let's give our description a value. So we are going to say that you are nothing but test description. Let's save this. Let's go back here, and what basically happens now is that if I click on send, it's going to create a resource and it's going to send me the data. So we have title, description, updated at, created at, and ID. Now that's here things get interesting. So what's happening is that we're getting all the data, but remember we are also adding completed, but we are not getting completed. Reason is because you see when I run this command, what it's going to do is that it's going to create a data that's going to send to me. If I make a get request now, click on send, now you're going to get completed to, and you see it's an array of all the data points. If I have one more data here, then it's going to have an ID of 2, created at, updated at, title, description, and completed. Pay attention to this completed. We are talking about JSON here, right? Although SQL stored this value as zeros, but we are talking about JSON here, and I don't want to send this value as 0 or 1 to my client. Okay, my client can be coding in JavaScript, Python, or whatever the language is, and they are happy to work with true and false. They want to work with true and false. So in that case, we can do something like cast. And what cast does is that it casts the value to any particular type. It's something that you should be familiar with if you are coded in Java or Kotlin. All that we have to do is to go to our ideas model. All right, and in ideas model, just as we had predicted fillable, we are going to have something like casts. So we are going to say protected dollar casts, and here we have to say what value that you want to cast and what type it will be. So I'm saying that my completed field is there in database, right? completed completed. This has to be casted as a boolean value, so b boolean. Let's save this now. Let's go back to Postman. Let's click on send again. Now this is false. So what Laravel did for us is that it actually casted this value. It actually casted this value to true and false. As simple as it is. And that's what I'm talking about, right? These simple lines of code, what they're going to do is that they're going to make your work so simple while you're making your REST APIs. I mean, at least the basics so simple so that you can focus on building the amazing part of your application, not worrying about these simple things or raw SQL queries, stuff like that. Anyway, now that I have done this, obviously this is not the way that we're going to create. What we need here is that we need to accept data from the user. Then we have to create a row according to that data, and all the data that you are going to get from the user is going to be in this dollar request. So what we have to do is to create a data based on that. So for that, let's go to our Postman, and there I'm saying my body is going to be raw data, and that's going to be JSON, and I'm going to send just 2 data, title and I'm going to say, so this is going to be title from Postman, and then we are going to have description, and this is going to be description from Postman. All right, save this, and sorry, we have to send this, and I have to create a data according to, I have to create an idea according to this data. Click on send, and obviously it's going to create this particular data only. What I want here is that, let's just comment it out. What I want here is that I want to say return. I'm just going to return. I'm just going to show you how you can get that value. I'm saying request all. When I do request all, you will see what the response you're getting. Click on send, and sorry, post. Click on send, and now you're getting title and description. Okay, so we are going to have this title and description here. Now you can either give this to this particular model. So one way is that you do something like return ideas model. One way is that you do something like return ideas model : create, and you simply pass request all. Okay, it's already and in an array. So now it's going to create that for us. So save, send, we have this created. Go to get again, click on send, and there we have created this. It's false. It has an ID of 2. Or you can even map that individually when you want to do that. So okay, so let's actually add some comment. So if you want to pass by keys, you can again do something like, I'm just basically going to copy this. Okay, let's paste it here. All right, so title is going to come from request all, and the key is going to be title, obviously. So paste it, and then it's going to be title, and then paste it here, and it's going to be obviously description. So let's save this, and again it's going to be the same. Let's go back here. Okay, now post, I'm saying title 2 from Postman, description 2 from Postman. Click on send, it's created. Let's go to get, click on send, and now you have title 2 from Postman, description 2 from Postman. So this method 2 works, but the best one is by sanitizing it, by validating the request. So what we call that is validating the request. Why do I need to validate it? Remember when I was just trying to add a title here, and when I was adding the title, it was giving me an error. It was saying that, hey, description is not null, so you can't keep this null. So what validation does is that it will sanitize the request before passing the values to the database. It's really important. It's really amazing. All that we have to do is that we have to just, write some very simple code, and it will do everything for us. We are going to talk about this in detail when we talk about user authentication. Right here, let's talk some, simple things here. All that you have to do is that you have to say $request, okay, validate, and then you have to say what you want to validate and what is the type of validation that you require. Now obviously if you want to learn more about validation, you can just visit the Laravel docs. Here I'm talking about simple stuff. I'm saying that title is not null, so title is going to be required. Okay, so if you're making a request that you want to create a resource, you have to send a title, and the same goes with description too. So let's paste it, and description is also required. Let's save this, and now I'm saying call this, okay, pass all the values, because that's the 2 values that we need. So now this is really interesting. So what it's going to do is that it's first going to validate the request, and only if title and description both are present, it's going to create a row for us. It's going to create a data for us. Let's go back to Postman. Now what I'm going to do here is that, let's remove this particular description from here. Let's cut this. Let's make it post request. Let's click on send, and you see we're going to get error. Okay, it says index description in file. Alright, so we're getting an error because you see we are trying to index description from this particular request which is not present. So instead of having an error here, it's going to have an error here itself, which is something we don't want, because this is the way that I really recommend you to use all the time. So now let's save this. Let's go back. Let's click on send again, and now you're going to have some really interesting error. Alright, so another interesting error here, as you can see, it's going to give us it's giving us some random error. We don't want that. We don't want HTML here, right? And the reason why it happens with Laravel is that sometimes you have to actually pass here that you want to accept it application/JSON. So earlier we are not having that error. There were 10 headers passed automatically. It's something an issue with Postman, sometimes actually an issue with Laravel too. So if you're ever having this error, if you ever see that, hey, you are making a request in API and it's giving you HTML or something like that, and you are passing some data, just come here and add a key that's going to be accept, okay, and it will be application slash sorry, not ECMAScript JSON. Let's send again, and now you are going to have this particular interesting error. So first thing first, see how Laravel simplifies thing for us. It's sending us a valid HTTP code. It's sending, hey, it's 422 unprocessable content, and then it's giving you error. So we have a message that the given data was invalid, and we are having error. So the error is there is a field called description, and it says that the description field is required. You can easily loop over this, and you can say that, all right, these are the errors which you have submission. And if I just remove this title too, right, now if I click on send, it's going to give us that, hey, title is required, description is required. All right, we don't want that, so let's give both the data, and now click on send, and it's going to create a resource for us. So let's go to get, click on send again, and now we are having 1 2 3 4. Interesting. So looks like a couple of things are working. We are having index, so we are basically returning all the data that we have, and we are having a store, which means we are basically validating the request and we are storing the data. So I'm not going to do that. Take this also kind of an assignment where you have to show depending on an ID. Now you might think that, hey, you haven't talked something about using IDs. Don't worry, that's what we are going to do now. We are going to do that in update and destroy, and that's where you can just transfer the concept of grabbing an ID from here to there. So first thing first, we have an update. So let's go back to our api.php, and here we have to add that route so that we can handle the update request. Okay, so we are going to have put request, but since we are having an ID here as a parameter, I have to put ID in here. Okay, so now it's going to work, and the method is update, save, and now as you can see here in the update, we are having a $ID. So whatever ID you pass, okay, that will be passed here, and that we can use. So what we have to do here is that we have to update, and the same process goes for update too, with just little difference. So let's say in update, you may want to make sure that one field is always available. So let's say you want the title to be always available, you want the description to be always available. Simply do a validation here too. All right. Right now, I don't worry about that. I don't care about that. Right now, if you're sending a single field, I'm going to update it. I don't have any problem with that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm saying find an idea, update an idea, and return that particular idea. So you're going to do something like $idea is equal to, and then we have our ideas model. Okay, that will be : find, and we will have $ID. Okay, so you see, now this is simple. Instead of writing your entire SQL command, I'm simply saying that from this model find data, it has this particular ID. It's going to find the data for us, idea. Okay, this idea that we have just found, we have to update it. So it's going to be update, and in update, I'm simply going to pass all the values that we have in request, and then I'm going to simply return the idea. All right, let's save this. Very interesting. Let's go back to our Postman. Let's first talk about errors. Let's go to put, and I'm saying update an idea which has an ID of 12. Obviously, we don't have any idea which has an ID of 12. So let's click on send now, and it says okay, it says ideas model not found. We have made some spelling error here. Let's just copy this. Let's just paste it here. Save. Let's go back, click on send again, and okay, call the member function update on null. So what we have to do is that we have to even check if this is not null. So we have to do if is null. We have this particular method here. I'm saying $idea. So if idea is null, simply return response. Okay, and you see, this is interesting. We have to send some response data. So first I'm going to send 400. 400 means bad request. Okay, and then we have to send some data. So I'm going to have data is equal to this particular array, and here we have some message for the user, so that they know what went wrong. And my message is that enter a valid ID. Okay, save, and I'm saying return this data as a response, and the response code should be $400. If it's not null, just update it. Save it. Let's go back to Postman. Let's click on send again. It says, hey, enter a valid ID. And if I do update 1 with let's say title, come on, updated from Postman, and I don't want to update description. Save this. Sorry. Click on send. Now it says that, hey, we have the title, and title is now updated from Postman. So if I go to get again, you see the ID one. Sorry, I don't want this ideas here. So you see now the ID one's title has been updated. It's up to title updated from Postman. Interestingly, you can also set this completed to true or false. So what I'm saying is that title is okay, set the completed to true, like, hey, I completed a task. User clicks on a button in your application, you're calling this API with setting completed to true, and you're saying, hey, that the task with the ID 1, set completed to true for that task. Click on send. It does that. Let's come to get again, click on send, and now you're going to get this completed is equal to true for this point. So the update part is simple and it is done. Last part is destroy. That's fairly simple. Let's first go to api.php. Let's call this will be destroy. All right, here we are going to have $id, sorry, just id. In our ideas controller, I have to simply do something like return ideas model $ds destroy this particular id. So let's save this, and so you are going to send an id and it will delete that particular data point. So I'm saying let's make a delete request, and the ID 1 I want to delete it. So let's click on send, and it says 1. 1 means it's deleted and 0 means it's not deleted. The same concept of true and false here. So now if I go to get, click on send, you see, sorry. Okay, now ID is 2. So ID 1 is not there because we have deleted it. And what if I do something like delete an ID of 12? It's going to send 0, which means that it did not delete that. So that means there could be some error. So well, that's pretty much it, right? Simple. You can add a resource, you can delete a resource, you can create a resource, you can update a resource, and we have also talked a little bit about request validation. So I think that's pretty much it from my side in this video. We'll talk about token based user authentication in Laravel in the next video. So till then, keep coding, keep loving, keep sharing, and peace.